Yeah, I think we're really resilient. I don't buy into the fact that we're going to see a dip. And I mean, certainly in the short term we have. It also depends what state you're in America, right? There are states that are thriving nowadays, and there are some states that aren't. I do consider myself battle tested during COVID, having overseen many different studios. And I would say the one thing that we can definitely say is it brought some light to digital fitness. Digital fitness is here to stay. And I think the more not only big box, but boutique studios that adapt some sort of version of that, I think we'll be better off for it. But at the end of the day, I spent some time at Les Mills, which is one of the leaders in group fitness many years ago. I worked for them. And they used to say one thing, and nothing beats an in-person experience. And so that's really when I flipped the switch in terms of thinking about what is that in-person experience. Post-pandemic, it doesn't matter. People want to be in a community, so long as it's safe, obviously, especially now more than ever. But, and so we learned some lessons, I think, for the better. Digital fitness is here to stay, but at the end of the day, people want to work out and they want to go somewhere to do that.
Mm. And do you see anything in terms of the people that are or are not coming back? What sort of things are you seeing in the US, or again, is that state to state?
There's an element of state to state to that, sure. I think digital fitness really prolonged people coming back. There's a certain percentage of that population that continues to do that, but it's very hard, right? I mean, even hardcore workout people like yourself, Matt, I'll pay a good compliment because you look like you're always in shape. But I mean, listen, at the end of the day, you want to be motivated and you want results. It's hard to do as a standalone digital fitness platform from home. Doesn't mean you can't. I always believe that platform should be a supplement to what you also do in studio. And so, I think the percentages will tick up. I think right now in our portfolio at Volofit, we're at about 85% to 90%, depending on where you're at in terms of people returning, which is fantastic, right? And so now it's about perfecting what that looks like and not only paying attention to new member acquisition and how we do that, with marketing specific to what's going on in the world, but how do you retain those people? Because a lot of times we talk about how do we get leads, how do we get members? What drives me up the wall is how do you keep them? That's why attrition is so bad in fitness. We don't pay attention to that. So I think it's a little bit of everything.
Why do you think that some of the boutiques have done quite well through this? Because I would have thought, I did think for quite a while that they'd be the first ones to probably disappear. And yeah, that doesn't seem to be the case for some of the better run boutiques.
Oh, absolutely. The friends of mine when the pandemic that were so concerned about me and boutique fitness, I called them now and I just said, I told you so. I actually was never worried, and here's why. What boutique fitness offers, and you're talking to a guy that's been in big box gyms and started as a trainer like most people and worked my way into the management side of the business, but really, and there's a passion even to this day in terms of big box and what it offers, but boutique fitness is really scalable, right? You have a smaller membership base with that comes a smaller footprint. And so, you're not catering to 15,000 people. And so what happened during the pandemic is we immediately pivoted to digital fitness platforms. I think in the first 6 months, we were retaining anywhere from 60 to 70% of the membership base that were continuing to pay. One, to not only support their home studio, but also they were getting good workouts, but they were getting good workouts from the actual coaches that were teaching it, right? Some of the issues the big box gyms had were they were kind of generic, and I give them all the credit in the world. But if my home boutique studio down the road, if my coach is John, I could still continue to coach with John digitally. And that's where boutique really thrived, was they became really scalable, they adapted really quickly, and they still made it about the same community.
Right. Yeah, I've not thought about it like that, but I suppose in a big box, and I generalize when I say a lot of this stuff, but in a big box, you probably don't know the name of too many people in there. I guess with the boutique, that one of the things they go out of their way is, the coach and the people on the front, and they know you. So I suppose that sort of community and personalization is already there when they're like, oh, would you like to train with Mary or Fred today? Whereas the big box is like...
Yeah, well, I mean, that's one of the learning lessons I learned. I mean, listen, it was a big leap for me to go from working for some of the top big box brands in the world to then just say, hey, I'm going to go to boutique fitness. And I didn't even know what that was about. I thought it was sort of like group fitness classes and something that I never used to do. I mean, I like HIIT training and functional training, but I would go and do what most guys do, chest and biceps every other day. But really what I learned is that first of all, it's about who's driving that market, right? And so it's millennials and Gen Z. And what we know about millennials and Gen Z, which I am a Gen Zer still, I'm assuming you are too, is that they like a couple of different things. They love the look and the feel of a place. Right? Like that's very important to them. What I also learned is something that I'm really passionate about.
When you say that, what do you mean? Like they just like going into physical locations?
Exactly. But the look and the feel, everything from the sound to the lighting to the equipment to just what it viscerally feels like when you go in. And there's been a lot of competitive analysis I've done over the last 5-6 years. And that's what drives me is walking into a place and not only understanding what the experience is like, but is how do I feel when I'm in here? Quite honestly, a lot of times I walk in a place, it feels like a doctor's office. That's not good. I don't get motivated from that. And what we know is a lot of people years ago migrated from big box to go to boutique because of two reasons, lack of motivation and lack of results, right? And they go hand in hand. No one has ever came up to me and said, I'm leaving a big box gym because my trainer has gotten me in amazing shape. I love everything about the gym. I don't mind the price point, but I'm going to leave. That doesn't happen. They leave because there's an element that's missing. And it could be any of those different cogs in the wheel.
One of the things I know you've done a bunch of videos. You've got an interesting YouTube channel, but I was watching some of the stuff on experience, which I thought was quite interesting. It's one of the things that as a company we believe in. You can have great trainers and great equipment on their own, but it's about creating that environment where you go and you sort of immerse yourself in it. How do you, in your business, define experience? What are some of the key components that make that up?
Oh man, Matt, how much time do we have? Do we have enough time? Because this is really my mindset for the last, I'd say, several to 10 years is, early on in my career, I was a trainer. I was fortunate to be successful. Whether that was luck or not, I'm not sure. But I always did well at sales. And I always thought to myself, like, I went to school to be a sports medicine therapist. That was my degree. At no point did I walk into my biomechanics class and my professor said, we're going to learn how to close a deal today. That just didn't exist. And so when I reflected back on it, I said, why was that? And the reason why I was successful, and I believe a lot of trainers are, is really because they provide a great experience. So when you think about what does that mean, right? A great experience means from the minute a person, or as we call it, a lead, calls into your gym or studio, everything that happens from that moment on is part of that experience. And everything from learning the person's name to understanding their needs analysis to if they come to a trial of yours, do you give them a tour? Is it a museum tour, which drives me up the wall? Museum tours, right? In the old days, they'd walk you through every single part of the gym. And I always used to say, I only use 2 parts of the gym. Show me where the free weights are and like an occasional treadmill. I don't need to see your pool. But that's how the salespeople are trained. It's not really personal. And so when I thought about a great experience, it's got to be personal. Right? It's got to be a personal experience. If you don't understand why that person would join in the first place, you are absolutely missing the point. And over the years, and having done a ton of role play, which is one of my favorite things to do, you would be surprised, or maybe not, how many people fail to even gather the basic information. And one thing I would always recommend is Simon Sinek, who's a famous business leader. And, I stumbled upon a TED Talk. It's one of the early TED Talks. It's very famous. It's called The Golden Circle. Mm-hmm. But Simon Sinek in it says, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. That is a creed that I have followed the last 10 years. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. The goal, Matt, is never to get someone to buy something based on what you have. Because let's be honest, every gym has the same stuff. They have weights, they have a staff, they have music, right? The goal is to get someone to buy something from you like a membership because they believe in what you believe in. And so if you really drill down to that experience is you got to be passionate about your brand first and foremost, or you won't sell a membership, period. Next, you have to understand that it's about the customer. Stop throwing up everything about your product and service. We get it, man. We offer great stuff. I get it. But you don't have to spit it out in the first 10 seconds on a call with a new potential member, right? And so take a breath, talk about the customer, make it 80, 90% about them, and then lead back to you as the solution. Those are the components to me that make a great brand and a great experience.
So you mentioned sales, and one of the things that I guess the boutiques, or some of the boutiques have done differently, some of them have actually removed the sales team. Some of them have removed them and put them back, and some of them kind of done a hybrid where they've got some of the people that are working in there to do the selling as well. I know you've got some great sales material. You've even got a book which is called Sell Out.
Yes.
So obviously sales is quite important to you. How do you feel about sales in the traditional format to boutique? And also, I'll go on to that because I interviewed Angel Banyos just a couple of weeks ago where he was saying, we're just going to get rid of all of our salespeople, simplify the process and put the energy and the resources into the areas that make a difference to the client. What's your views on that?
So here's a great point, and you bring up obviously a past guest who's phenomenal in the business as well. And I sort of agree, and there's some points to learn from that, but let's define salesperson. So Matt, would you consider a trainer part of the sales process?
Well, for me, I would agree that, and you can say, well, what does actually sales mean? I suppose.
Exactly. Sure, we can do right a little bit more.
But I would say that if sales is kind of explaining what you're doing and helping the prospect client to make a really, really good informed decision, then yes, a personal trainer should be able to do that. A lot of personal trainers feel as though they're not salespeople and they feel that's unnatural. But as does my wife, and yet she's a fantastic salesperson. Exactly. She likes helping people. She doesn't like selling, and I suppose that seems to be where the industry sort of gets a little bit stuck.
Yeah, and you need people to tell people like myself, and I'm not afraid to tell people whenever I walk into a studio or a big box gym, if I'm teaching the staff there, is that we're all salespeople at some level. That's the bottom line. And so you need to understand that first, because if you don't understand that, people get scared of that word. I hate selling, but I never sell. I provide a great experience. I could care less what the price is, because at the end of the day, it's about, I believe in my services. Like, I'm a great trainer. That's the truth. And so why should I be afraid of talking about how much it costs to train with me? And so, it's interesting, when I came over to Volofit, I talked to the CEO, who's a good friend of mine, Britt, and he's like, listen, your focus is operations. And I go, I know. And I go, do you know that one of the most important pieces of the puzzle to operating a great studio is understanding your sales cycle? And so although I talk a lot about sales, for me, I don't think of it like that. I think of it, any great operating studio, what you'll find, not 100% of the time, but most, is that they have an unbelievable onboarding experience. You could call that the sales experience. I don't care what you call it, but there's an element of sales there, right? You have to talk to a customer, and then at some point you got to pitch a membership. And so you can make that really, really personal and really make it feel good. Or, no offense to used car salespeople, but you can make it like trying to sell a car. And so what I've learned is that whether you have a sales associate or a general manager or a head coach, it doesn't necessarily, there is no right or wrong into what your staff should be. There's no absolute solution to it. Boutique has a little bit more wiggle room, smaller footprint like we talked about, but at the end of the day, everyone is part of that process. Now, the great thing about what I do is I'm able to help tailor that specific process where everyone's involved in the sales process, right? But it doesn't feel like that to them.
So how do you get over the face-to-face over people just buying online? I guess people we had ClassPass on a few weeks ago as well, where I suppose that's just all digital, isn't it? Can you transfer that same idea digitally, or do you need to kind of get them in and then go through it?
The experience, again, nothing beats the in-person experience like we talked about. So the question is, how do you get them in when there's a lot of other offerings? You know what it is? It's not rocket science. We call them, right? The lost art of calling, in whether it's boutique or big box, is crazy. We've replaced that with text messaging. And the real answer is, and there's some great automations that we use to help get in touch with customers, right? I mean, listen, the general statistic is it takes 10 to 15 times to get a hold of a lead or to get them in the door, but it's true. And so a couple of things that people need to be aware of is, don't be shy to pick up the phone and call someone. Now, when you do get someone on the phone, to get them in. Because at the end of the day, I always say, Matt, sales is about making it as easy as possible for someone to say yes. That's Bottom line, that's my mantra when it comes to trying to get a new member is make it as easy as possible. So how do you do that? It's by asking powerful questions. Now, I've learned powerful questions do three things. Number one, they can overcome an objection before it even happens, right? And so if you called up a customer right now to try and get them into your 7-day trial or 2-day trial, whatever it is, there are some questions you could ask right now so later on you don't hear those common objections. Like Matt, you won't hear, I want to think about it, or I want to talk to my spouse. She makes all the financial decisions. Like there are questions you could ask, like I would ask you, Matt, who supports you in this decision in maybe joining a gym? And you might say your wife, right? Great, what's your wife's name?
Wendy.
So Wendy's not going to be pissed, Matt, when you come home and you're like, I joined the gym because my goal is to lose 5 pounds. I'm going to be ripped. She's not going to be pissed, right? So powerful questions could overcome objections. Another thing powerful questions could do is plant seeds. So for me, I don't like sounding salesy, but I do like planting seeds. Like instead of saying like, have you ever worked with a trainer before? To me, it feels like you're trying to sell me training. I teach our people to say something more or less like, hey, so Matt, it sounds like you're looking for more consistency in the program moving forward. Is that right? Exactly, right? And then the last thing a powerful question can do, and it's most important, this is the most important to me, is it activates the decision-making part of the brain. And that just means it's simply emotional. Joining something or spending money is an emotional act. And so it's 90% emotion, right? And so if you could connect personally, which again, a text message is hard to do, right? You have a better likelihood of that person saying yes to not only coming into your studio or gym, but buying a membership at that point. So at the end of the day, we need to call people, follow up with a text, and then continue that process until we get a hold of them. And what we learned is we get a hold of people. People want to talk about their goals. They just don't want to be sold.
So you think you're, in terms of your experience then, is the salespeople, whether that's a trainer or an actual salesperson, getting people on the phone and trying to get them coming in is an important part of the process?
Absolutely, but it does, and if you think about that formula, like how that call goes, it should be all about a person first. So what's your goal? Why is it your goal? What have you been doing in the past? Who's your support system? How motivated are you? You know, all those great questions, some qualifying questions. Then you lead back to you, because you could talk about your product or service for the next 24 hours. It doesn't matter if you don't know why someone would want to join in the first place. And so I've role played with people in the past where they spent 17 minutes talking about how great their program is. And then I would stop them and go, great, what's my goal? And they'd be like, oh, I don't know. I'm like, don't you find that weird? And I think maybe it's the trainer in me my whole life. Like, I mean, have you ever worked with a trainer, Matt? You look like you have, right? Would it be weird if you paid a trainer to train you, but that trainer never asked you what you're trying to work on? It'd be weird. We do this in the fitness industry all the time. Boutique fitness, big box gyms. We tour people and we call people and we're great at talking about ourselves. But what I would advocate is spend more time on the person and understanding why they would want to join in the first place.